Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be speaking here today. Thank you all for coming out to listen. For those watching the live video, we're very glad you're here. I'll be talking on the topic of studying for the test. Before I do, I want to introduce myself a little bit more. So my name is Hannah Newell. From youth competitions, more might know me by my maiden name, Hannah Wisniewski. I do currently live in St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in a small town called Newell, Pennsylvania. And that's where I started raising rabbits. So why was I asked to speak here today? I've got to click ahead in my slides here a little bit. All right, so I said that. I put together a little photo timeline for you for today. Duh. So I started off raising rabbits and participating in a lot of youth contests growing up. So why was I asked to speak here today? I started raising rabbits 20 years ago. I've been an ARBA member for 15 years. I competed in state achievement days competitions growing up for 4-H in Pennsylvania, and then that got my foot in the door with Pennsylvania state royalty competitions. And I was hooked, and so then I started participating in the ARBA national royalty. In 2008, I was the runner-up ARBA queen. 2009, I was the ARBA queen and the Pennsylvania State Rabbit Breeders Association queen. I've been a licensed registrar for almost 10 years, and just earlier this year became licensed as an ARBA judge. So all of that to say that I have taken a lot of tests, and I've been successful. So I'm here today to share with you some tips I have and some strategies on how to make your studying work best for you. And I'm calling this my 3-step method. So we start off, step 1. Step 1 is to gather your resources. And this might seem very common sense, and it is, because these are your tools. This is all the information that you need to learn. So if you make sure you have what you need when you start off, you'll start off on a good foot. So firstly and most obviously, you'll want the standard of perfection. And you want to make sure it's the current version. And also that you have any additional inserts that might have been added since it was printed. Those can all be found on the ARBA website. If you go to the member resources drop down and click on the standards committee, you can print those right off. So standard of perfection to start with. I would also add to that the registrar study guides. They're a very helpful companion guide with the standard. They give a more brief summary of each breed. They give questions specific for each breed. And they also give practice exams through the book that are very helpful. And there's one for rabbits and one for cavies. I also added any other practice tests that you can find. I personally had a few from over the years from mostly 4-H contests where I'd mark down, my answers, and then we were told the right answers, and I'd cross off, circle the right one if I got one wrong. Anything like that can be very helpful. Just want to make sure the answers are correct according to the standard because those aren't official. There are other materials you'll create along the way. I'll talk about those in a minute. And mentors and study partners. I was blessed to have some very good mentors over the years, and I still do. Mentors can be anybody. Could be your parents, could be club leaders, could be other breeders. Anybody that you can go to help you find your answers when you aren't sure where to look, and they can help teach you. And study partners are helpful for a couple reasons. They can help keep you motivated if you're not feeling like studying that one night, and everyone else is studying, so I guess I'll study. And you can ask each other questions back and forth. It can really help you learn. So step 1 is gather your resources. We're already done with step 1. Step 2 is make a study schedule. I think this is very important because it breaks your studying down into manageable, smaller chunks. It keeps you from missing out on any studying that you wanted to make sure to include. And it also keeps you on track, so you aren't worrying about fitting it all in or how much time there is left to the test. You can just take it one step at a time and know that when the test gets here, you'll be ready. All right. Okay, that works good. Go ahead. So when you're making your study schedule, ideally, you'd like to start as far ahead of the test as you can. Give yourself as much time as possible. And if you leave time at the end for review, that really can help the information to stick. So this would keep you from having that crunch time at the end and help make the whole process more fun, less stressful. Okay? So let's say you have 4 months until your test. Let's say you have May, June, July, and August. And this test just covers rabbits, so you're trying to get ready to start studying. So this is what your basic schedule could look like. So how would you fill this out? You could fill this out any way you'd like. There's no right or wrong, just to break down the information that you in particular want to learn and want to fit in. Because everybody knows different stuff. You have different strong points and weaker points, so you want to make sure that you're learning what you need to learn. So maybe week 1 you say, well, I'll start off by studying the wool breeds. And week 2, I'll look at the lop breeds. Or maybe week 1, you learn the fur types for each breed, and week 2, you look at a few of the marked breeds. It's entirely up to you. For this example, let's say that week 1, you look at the fur types. So we're ready for our next slide. And you learn the fur types for each breed week 1. So there's all that other stuff that you know you need to learn, but just ignore that. Just the one thing for week 1. So by the end of this week, if you were to take a test that says, what type of fur does the lilac breed have, you'd already know it. You're off to a great start. So, fur types. And I've gone ahead and I've filled out all the rest of this as an example. And this is just an example. You could do it any way you like. So week 1, you learn the fur types. Week 2, body types and show classes. So if week 1, you learn that the lilac has rollback fur, week 2, you learn that has compact body type and it's foreclass. So you already have a rounding out picture of each breed. Then I put down that weeks 3 and 4, you look at some of the marked breeds, more specifically a few each week, learning what the ideal markings would be, what disqualifications would be for them. June, looking at the lop breeds and the wool breeds, kind of more in-depth. Additional information through July, and you might notice that August looks a little funny. I didn't just get lazy filling it out either. I do believe that the review at the end built in is very important for a few reasons. It helps you if maybe you're following the schedule and then you end up taking a vacation or you get sick or whatever, and you're a week or 2 behind your schedule and you get to August. You don't have to worry about it. You still have time. And if you're ending the week of July and you're like toward the end of your studying and you hear somebody else mention something that they're studying and you think, oh, I probably should have put that in my schedule, you still have time to put it in there. And that review really does help the information to stick. So when you take the test, it's fresh and it's not so hard to bring to memory. So that is an example schedule. And I mean, it really does help. So step 1 is gather resources. Step 2, you make a study schedule. But these 2 steps can overlap a bit, because while you're following along your study schedule, you can create some study resources that you didn't have when you started off. And of those, I am thinking of flashcards, what I call quick lists, and comparison charts. And I'll explain what each of those are. So flashcards, we all know what flashcards are. These are a few that I made when I was studying. So question on the front, answer on the back. You can do them however you want. A few tips on them, though. If you end up with a pile and you put them on a ring, every once in a while, take that ring off and shuffle them up and put them back on. Because you're not going to know what order the questions are going to come at you when you take the test. So if you can make your study questions random, that'll help. Some of them you can even try backwards. And this doesn't work on all of them. But if you're going through and you get used to just, you see the front, you know it's on the back, right? So let's see, this is an example from some glossary terms. So on the front it says, what is a nose fork? On the back it says the body portion of the butterfly marking. Like, okay, so every time I see nose fork, I'm like, okay, part of the butterfly marking. But then if I take a break from looking at these and I come back and I look at it the other way around and I say the body portion of the butterfly marking, I might think, oh shoot, what's that called? It makes you think about it a little different. So sometimes that can work. Here's an example when it wouldn't work. 2 inches. So I don't know what the question was. So sometimes it'll work, sometimes it won't. You can play around with that, trying them backwards. Quick lists, on the other hand, are a list of usually 5 to 10 items that you memorize. Examples would be breeds that disqualify for having a dewlap, breeds that you are allowed to move freely when you're judging them, breeds that have semi-arch type. Any of those are a list of what these few breeds have in common that the rest don't. And then you can just memorize that little list and know that it's those breeds that are included in that. And you can end up with little quick lists of things to memorize for really anything that you come across that you notice that these few have in common. So I did use those. I also used comparison charts. And these were to compare breeds that seem very similar to each other. so I could tell them apart. And it did it in a side-by-side format, so I mean, when you just look at it, you can see, okay, they have this in common, they have that makes them different. A few breeds, as an illustration, would be like the American versus the Beveren. Chances are, if you don't raise either one, when you're reading about them, they might seem pretty similar. Or the Havana versus the Mini Satin. You might think, well, the Mini Satin has a lot more varieties. That's true. But what if you have a black Havana sitting next to a black Mini Satin? How else can you tell them apart besides the color? Or the Checker Giant versus the English Spot versus the Rhinelander. Like any breeds that have some similarities, you can use these comparison charts. They're not that complicated. So on the next slide, I have an example of one for the American and the Beveren. So I put both on the top, and you look at body type. Okay, they both have semi-arch type. All right, they're the same there. The ears are carried. Well, the American carries the ears erect, the Beveren carries them in a V shape, so there's a small difference. Fur types, those are different. The Americans fly back, and the Beverens roll back. Recognized varieties are a little bit different. The American recognizes blue and white, and the Beveren recognizes black, blue, and white. So right off, you know that black is only for the Beveren. What if you have two white ones? Then what do? Well, the eye color on the white is different. A white American would have pink eyes, and a white Beveren would have what it says, a brilliant blue eyes. And you can keep going and add other stuff for length, whatever you want to compare between the two. And I didn't type these up when I was studying, and that would have taken way too much time. I just wrote the names on the top of the sheet, any questions down the side, and then I just answered them across. And then I would just use those to compare and try to remember the differences between the breeds. With the example of the Checker Giant and the English Spot and the Rhinelander, you might think, well, those ones look different enough that if you saw one, it's not a problem, I can tell which one it is. And that's fair. Those ones, it was more to compare their markings, like which ones are allowed to have spots on their front legs, or the ideal width of their spine marking, that kind of stuff. It was more just to look at their markings. So those are the comparison charts. Step 1 is resources. Step 2 is make yourself a study schedule. Step 3 is to be your own examiner. I want you to challenge yourself as you go along and ask yourself the really tough questions. So if you're ready for a question that will really take your studying up to the next level, it's this one. What do I hope they're not going to ask me? Because if you ask yourself that and start making a list of those are the things that you can work on that'll really step it up, because those are the things that right now are maybe your weak points. If you ask yourself these kinds of tough questions, what do I hope they won't ask me? What breeds do you hope they don't ask questions about? Like maybe you're thinking, I'm feeling good. I just hope they don't ask any questions on Polish, right? Anything like that. Are there breeds or varieties that you get easily confused? Like anything that you want to focus on? So ask yourself these questions, and it can be a really great tool for you, because you make a list of them and add to it if you need to as you go along. And that alone will help bring you to the next level, because it helps you to focus where you need to focus. Okay. If you're tough and honest with yourself, that's okay. If the list is getting long, you're getting a little scared, it's all right. You have time to fix it, right? You have that schedule you built, so you're going to go ahead, build these into your schedule, and as you learn each one, cross it off. As you think of more as you go along, add them in. It's all part of the process. It'll really help you get there. All right, so that's what I was saying. Yep, if you don't know where to find your answer, you have your resources there, so this list of things that you're crossing off that you need to learn. If you aren't sure where to look, ask a mentor. They're a very important resource for you, and they should be able to help you get to where you need to go. Right, so we have our 3 steps now. We have step 1 is gathering your resources. Step 2, you make yourself a study schedule. And step 3 is that you be your own toughest examiner and ask yourself those tough questions before the test does. And that'll really help you in your studying. So you've come all this way. You've studied really, really hard, and it's test day. I have a few tips for you on actually taking the test. I have 3 tips. Are you ready? Oh, wait, I did have 1 tip here. Say you're getting to that review portion you built in at the end of your study schedule. A really good way to really make sure that the information is there is to try to write your own exam, even if it's just 5 or 10 questions, the toughest questions you can think of. Because you spend all this time learning the answers, you've been memorizing the material, it can be really hard to come up with a question instead. So try to think of the questions, write them down. And if you have study partners, and you all do that, you can swap tests and each take the other person's test and explain like, oh, I don't know if that was right because of such and such, and that can help you out too. This is a little advanced tip. All right, so now we're at test day, after the practice test. And the tips I have for you are, number one, sorry, I didn't realize I built in a couple extras. Read the entire question. Right, so you're taking the test. Make sure you read the entire thing. Read it 2 or 3 times if the wording is confusing. Right? You don't want to miss a key word that really changes the whole meaning of the question. So take your time. Make sure you read the entire thing. Number 2, circle or underline any keywords that change the meaning of the sentence, like except, not, must, never, always, anything like that. So the following breeds have compact type except. Oh, circle that one. You're looking for a breed that does not have compact type. And the last one is to maybe try guessing the answer before you read the options that they're giving you. You could even hold your hand over the answers and read the question. Like maybe it's the mini-rex disqualifies for ears that are over what length? And just think, do I know that? And what do you think the answer is? Even maybe jot the answer down to the side. Then look at the answers and see. Because if you look at the answers first, sometimes the numbers will jump out at you and you'll be thinking of the wrong breed, or you just second guess yourself. So that can help you, with some questions at least, to try to guess it before you read the options even. So those are my test day tips. And I can tell you that this method, it does work. When I was studying for my most recent test, when I wanted to look at the checker giant, the Rhinelander, the English spot, more carefully. So I built more time into my study schedule. I used those comparison charts, and I really focused on them. And that really did help. Breeds like the black Havana versus the black mini satin. If you just build that time in there to focus on them, learn what else makes the breeds different from each other, then you'll have an easier time telling them apart. So you can think of the hardest combinations and try to do that. I remember I was taking the test, or it was the day before the test, for one of the State Achievement Days competitions in 4-H. So it was the day before the test, and I was reviewing. And in this particular test, there's not just a written test that you take, but there's a buzzer round where there's 8 kids sitting there with buzzers, and 2 teams of 4. And the examiner will start reading the question out loud until somebody buzzes in, and then they'll stop reading the question. They won't finish it if you buzz in early. That's important. So it was the day before, and I was reviewing. I was actually going over some of those quick lists. So I imagine myself being asked, name the breeds that disqualify for having a dewlap. And I imagine myself buzz right in, rattle them right off. I've got this. I'm good. So then the next day, I'm sitting there with a buzzer in my hand, and she starts reading the question. Name 4 breeds that disqualify for having, and I buzz. And I'm like, everyone kind of looks at me, and I'm thinking, I really hope she was about to say dewlap. So then my mind's like racing, thinking, what else might 4 breeds disqualify for that the others don't? I think it's dewlap. So I listed off 4 breeds off that list, and thank goodness it was right. So that was almost a mistake. But studying that way and asking myself the questions made me prepared for that question, maybe too prepared for that question, because I jumped the gun on it a little bit. But this does also carry beyond rabbits, this being able to study this way. With schoolwork, prepping for tests in any subject, if you ask yourself the tough questions before the test does, it really can help you with your studying. And beyond graduation, beyond college, whenever you start interviews, what are some really hard questions the interviewers might ask? Think of some possible answers, and you can beat them to it. And then you'll be more relaxed heading into it, more prepared, and all set to go. But have fun. I mean, when I take a test and I come across a question that I didn't think of ahead of time, I kind of think, yeah, good one. Okay, and I learned something new. On the other hand, you might be taking a test and you see one of the toughest questions you thought of ahead of time. They actually did ask it on the test, and you think, aha, nice try. I got this. So there's always more to learn. This is just a way to learn a little bit more, faster, to be as well prepared as you can for the test. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, thank you.